Good afternoon, and welcome to the annual Case Western Reserve University MLK Convocation, the highlight event of several programs celebrating this year's theme, Martin Luther King Jr., honoring his legacy in a new era. My name is Dr. Marilyn Sanders Mobley, and I am honored to serve as the Vice President for Inclusion, Diversity, and Equal Opportunity, and as Professor of English in the College of Arts and Sciences. On behalf of the Share the Vision Committee and all of the faculty, students, staff, and alumni who have contributed to today's event, I welcome you to this very special program. With this program, we are honoring Dr. King's legacy in a new era by welcoming one of our nation's most dynamic thought leaders and a dear friend, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, to serve as our keynote speaker. Welcome, Dr. Mike. We are so glad you could join us. I also want to recognize some very special guests who are here with us. Beverly Charles from the office of Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, Meredith Turner from the office of Senator Sherrod Brown, T.J. Dow of Cleveland City Council, Ward 7, and Belva Denmark-Tibbs, Vice President of Medical Operations at Kaiser Permanente, one of our corporate sponsors for today's program. Thank you for coming. We're so glad you could join us. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the MLK Committee who worked so hard on planning the series of programs, including our MLK Essay Contest. Could the members of the committee please stand wherever you are? Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. I especially want to thank Obi Oku, our essay contest coordinator, who took the words implementation, organization, and follow-through to a whole new level. We really thank Obi for all that he did to help us. So, Obi, we really appreciate how you helped us have the best participation. Where is Obi? Where are you? I need some. Okay, there he is. We had the best participation since 2009. I would now like to recognize our essay contest finalists. This year we had 3 categories, one for our undergraduate students, one for our graduate and professional students, and one for faculty and staff. The finalists are as follows, and if you could please stand when you hear your name. For the graduate and professional school student category, receiving honorable mention were Opuver Chandar, Graham Lance, Capri Harrell, Malavika Kesavan, and in second place, sharing second place, were Dante Gibbs and Caitlin Sandley. And first place for this category was Anita Sandhu. In the undergraduate student category, receiving honorable mention, first was a team of 3 who submitted one entry, David Sullivan, Anuj Desai, and Isaac Perlman. Also receiving honorable mention were Vudishai Yogeswaran, Candace Martin. Receiving second place in the undergraduate category is Jennifer Hale. And receiving first place in this category is Divya Agarwal, our USG president. In the faculty staff category, receiving honorable mention was Janine Apadone, Dean Patterson, David Crampton. Second place in this category, Eric Andrelis. He's back there. And first place, Sarah Greenlee. Let's congratulate all the winners. Congratulations to each of you. Their essays will be on display during the reception following this program across the way in El Delbert Hall, along with information about our sponsors, the Essay Contest Committee, and the essay judges. We especially thank PACM, the OIDIO office, and the Office of Share the Vision and the Office of Residence Life for serving as our sponsors. I thank the team of faculty, students, and colleagues for their participation. I am pleased to report that as of January 5th, I am now serving in my 3rd year as Vice President for Inclusion, Diversity, and Equal Opportunity. I am no longer new. I don't don't think I can say I'm new. I'm not new anymore. Ever since President Barbara Snyder appointed me to serve in this critical role, aligned with the university's strategic plan forward thinking, I've been aware that I've been keenly aware of what Damon Williams and Katrina Wade Golden referred to as the complex mandate of a university chief diversity officer. For me, that mandate is complex because it requires what I call both-and critical thinking. This mandate requires that I both be willing to speak truth to power, to tell it like it is, and it requires that I be willing, ready, and able to inspire us as a community to think to be better than we've been as we build on our strengths as one of the nation's great research institutions located right here in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm not going to talk about our lunch discussion about Ohio, about Cleveland. This mandate reminds me of on a daily basis that I want to honor the legacy of Dr. King by the way I lead and honor the educational rationale, the business case, and the economic imperative for diversity. I'm so proud of the dynamic team of individuals at this university who genuinely care about diversity and who have been willing to demonstrate their commitment by the way we conduct the business of educating this generation of citizens, scholars, researchers, and leaders. We know that diversity makes a difference and that inclusion makes that difference have an impact. We know that this work is both connected to compliance with federal laws at the same time that it is about engaging in best practices to create the kind of campus community we want to be. And we are aware of the unique role we play in assisting both our campus and the city of Cleveland in becoming the beloved community that Dr. King spoke so eloquently about, even when he visited Cleveland. Dr. King's birthday is not just an occasion to remember one speech or one march. His birthday is an occasion to reflect on what it means to be an ethical citizen and a change agent. He did not look at problems and hope someone would take care of them. He looked at issues of injustice and decided he had an obligation to contribute to correcting them. When I went to the new King Monument last summer, I remember my colleague wanting to take a picture of my son next to the 30-foot statue of Dr. King. My son objected to having his picture taken. He explained later that he did not want to offend my colleague, Letitia James. We were there for the Congressional Black Caucus meeting. He didn't want to offend you, but he said he wanted to commemorate that moment at the monument for more than being a photo opportunity. He knew his grandparents, my mother and father, had worked in the NAACP and had gone to the March on Washington to hear Dr. King speak. He was troubled by the progress our nation had not made. At the same time, he was aware as a third-generation graduate from an institution that we had more work to do to realize Dr. King's dream, not only for his own children, but for every child. When my other son took me to the Broadway play on Dr. King, I found myself thinking about a line late in the play about the need to pass the baton. So for the next few minutes, as I share highlights about the state of diversity at Case Western, I'm aware that this work is about accepting the baton of responsibility to make democracy work even better now than it did when he was alive for everyone, not just a few. The state of diversity at Case Western Reserve University is a story of moving in the right direction and moving the needle toward being the change we want to see. So I'd like to share a few highlights, and because we got started a little bit later, I won't go through all of these. I will tell you, some people know I just had a grandbaby, but this is my other baby. My baby is here. Our annual report for 2011, it's called Advancing Diversity. You'll be able to get it on the way out. You'll also be able to get it at the reception. And in this report, we highlight some of the progress we've made in developing a diversity strategic action plan. We highlight the fact that we have begun a Power of Diversity lecture series, which has now become one of our signature programs here at the university. In that series, we brought Dr. Julianne Malveaux last year. We also brought CEO of Diversity Inc. magazine, Luke Visconti. If you pay attention to our website, you'll learn about other events related to that series, including we'll be bringing Dr. Mae Jameson here in March. The new report also focuses on the ways we've been doing faculty searches. Part of our initiatives have been about training faculty through our IDEAL program. There have been new opportunities for professional development. We're also in our faculty search process training and helping faculty search committees know how to pay attention to unconscious bias so that we achieve diverse pools. Through our supplier diversity initiative, we've been reaching out to more minority and women-owned firms and have invited some of them to serve as members of our council. Our Train the Champion series is a successful initiative that we piloted last year to give our faculty and staff opportunities to learn about the wide stretch of what we mean by diversity. Last year, we received Best in Class for workforce diversity for our initiatives around training and education of our campus community. And we have enterprising students at our campus who, thanks to their initiative, we are now part of President Obama's Interfaith Initiative, which he began last year. The Interdisciplinary Alliance Initiative out of the Provost Office is responsible for our new Social Justice Institute, and that institute has already begun this week piloting the new course that was developed in the institute. Many of the items that I've just shared, I invite you to read and study and pay attention to in our report. We are not claiming by any stretch of the imagination that we have arrived, but we say that it is work that is important, it is work that we care about, and we have a committed faculty, students, and staff, and we have buy-in for this whole initiative from the top in the form of our president. As a campus community, we are moving the needle and valuing the educational rationale for diversity, the business case, and the economic imperative, both for us and for the community in which we live, not just to be competitive, not just to survive, but to thrive. As I leave, I want to say that we know this work is hard work, but it's the good work. It's the work that honors the work of Dr. King. So I thank you for coming. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to Case Western Reserve's own gospel choir, Voices of Glory.
Has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. We shall overcome. We shall overcome.
Thank you, Voices of Glory. It was a beautiful performance. I want you to know that the Voices of Glory Gospel Choir was founded 13 years ago by two Case Western Reserve University freshmen, and they have been enriching our campus with their music ever since. They also star annually in our Gospel Fest that is the culmination of Alumni Weekend every fall. If you haven't been, I urge you to come next year. It's a real treat, and this group really is the star of that show. I'm pleased to see so many of you here today to help us celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Cleveland actually hosted Dr. King a number of times. In fact, recently, I hope you all read the story about the uncovering of the tape of Dr. King's speech about 4 miles from here, actually, at Glenville High School in the spring of 1967. The audio of Dr. King's speech that day was discovered in a box of items headed for the trash. Now, when I say audio, many of you are too young to know, but there was this thing called reel-to-reel tape, and that is the way that this speech was recorded. Case Western Reserve actually played a role in helping to preserve that. An alumnus of our university brought the tape to the university's Kelvin Smith Library to be transferred from that reel-to-reel tape, which was 44 years old, and it was done at our Friedman Center. The newspaper quoted the center's creative new media officer, Jared Bendis, and he described how he felt when he pressed play the very first time and heard Dr. King's words on that reel-to-reel tape. He said, and I love this description, that what he loved was the full glory, capture the room, voice reverberating, give you the chills, Dr. King. What a speech it was. Dr. King's message at Glenville was one of empowerment. He urged listeners to believe in themselves and their abilities, to embrace their somebodyness. He told the crowd that day, don't let anybody make you feel that you are nobody, because the minute one feels that way, he is incapable of rising to his full maturity as a person. Dr. King's words from that speech and from so many others resonate today as testaments to his leadership and as reminders of the work that remains to be done to fulfill his vision. That's why I'm so happy to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, who wrote 2 books on Dr. King, including the bestseller, I have it right here, April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr.'s Death and How It Changed America. He's going to share his valuable insights with us today, but let me tell you a few things about Dr. Dyson. Michael Eric Dyson is well known for his scholarly analysis of hip-hop and urban culture. He's been featured in many media outlets, The Today Show, The Washington Post, MTV for the younger set, and for the incredibly popular class he teaches at Georgetown University on the sociology of hip-hop. He's got a focus in that class on someone I know many of you know, rapper and music mogul Jay-Z. His work as a scholar, an author, and a social critic addresses issues of poverty, race, politics, sexism, and the economy. He's written 17 books on subjects ranging from Malcolm X and Marvin Gaye to Hurricane Katrina and the black middle class. In a foreword to one of Dr. Dyson's books, Jay-Z praised him for taking modern urban life seriously and for bringing the tools of a so-called legitimate society to bear on a place that too many dismissed as unworthy of attention. Dr. Dyson's books on Dr. King challenge readers to deepen their knowledge of and appreciation for Dr. King, both as a human being navigating his own personal struggles and as a champion of civil rights, shouldering the struggles of millions of people. Dr. Dyson overcame some struggles of his own, rising from a working-class Detroit neighborhood where he was mentored by his church pastor, who quoted poverty and emphasized the value of education. Dr. Dyson was ordained as a Baptist minister at age 19 and also worked in factories to support his family. He entered college as a freshman at age 21, went on to earn a bachelor's, master's degrees, and then decided to pursue his PhD, as he puts it, after failing as a pastor. His failure, I need to tell you, was that he tried unsuccessfully at the time to ordain 3 women into the church, which was deemed too progressive by the church elders who voted him out. He went on to earn his doctorate in religion from Princeton University, and he's done really well since then. He taught at Brown, the University of Pennsylvania, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, among other outstanding places, before joining the faculty of Georgetown University. He's received the NAACP Image Award 2 times, and he's been named one of the 150 most powerful African Americans by Ebony magazine. Dr. Dyson is not afraid to tackle topics that make people uncomfortable. He challenged Bill Cosby for his views on poverty in the inner city. He's publicly discussed stereotypes around African American women. He takes us all to task for exploiting Dr. King's dream by creating a holiday, yet not forcing ourselves to address the unresolved issues of his legacy and his vision. Dr. Dyson has said publicly that he would like to see a moratorium on the use of the same quotes over and over from Dr. King's very famous "I Have a Dream" speech. As Dr. Dyson says accurately, Dr. King was much more complex than one speech, even if it was his most famous speech. So I'm going to end by quoting a speech Dr. King gave on April 4th, 1967, exactly 1 year before his death at Riverside Church in New York City. In that speech, he called on our nation to reevaluate the glaring contrast of poverty and wealth. Dr. King said then, and I quote, "True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. An edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring." Dr. Dyson has spent his professional life calling our collective attention to many causes that warrant restructuring. It is my great privilege to present Dr. Michael Eric Dyson.
I want to thank President Snyder for that very generous and gracious introduction, and for extending through Dr. Marilyn Sanders Mobley the invitation to come here to Case Western University and to be able to chat with you about Dr. King and the extraordinary legacy that he has left us. I want to thank President Snyder for hosting a very raucous luncheon. We may tell you later on what we were discussing there, but I'll just tell you I was pilloried, I was assaulted, I was demonized, vitriolically repudiated, and not allowed to finish my lunch. All of which is true. But when you know the person I was speaking about, you'd probably figure out already what we were talking about. All right. But what a wonderful group of people outside of that room are here at Case Western Reserve University. An extraordinary group of people. Dr. Mobley, of course, is not only the Vice President for Inclusion, Diversity, and Equal Opportunity here at Case Western Reserve, but I've known her for many more years when she was a professor and director of African American Studies at George Mason University in the DC area, and then later on when she was provost at Bennett College. I saw her in her glory, and she invited me there. And then the former president and now board member of the Toni Morrison Society. So she is quite accomplished, brilliant, engaged, and you have an extraordinary woman working with you here at Case Western Reserve. So, amen. In fact, I was surrounded today by brilliant and engaged women like Professor Mobley and like President Snyder and many other of the members of your academic community that we had the opportunity to have lunch with. And of course, representatives from Marsha Fudge's, the Congresswoman from here, her office. I must give a shout out to my late great friend, Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs Jones was a great friend of mine, as well as Congresswoman Fudge's. They do great work and extraordinary figures. Representatives from Kaiser Permanente who are here, the Councilman Dow who is here, and so many others who gathered together in that room. I'm honored and grateful. Now, today what I want to do is to reflect on this extraordinary topic in celebrating Dr. King, Martin Luther King Jr. honoring his legacy in a new era. And we celebrate that choir that came up here as well. They were small in number but great in voice and did some extraordinary work. Now, I want to reflect on this subject, Dr. King for the 21st century, honoring his legacy in a new era. When we think about Martin Luther King Jr., we think about one of the most extraordinary human beings that we have ever witnessed, not only on American soil, but on earth. That may seem hyperbolic to some, exaggerated to others. And yet, Martin Luther King Jr., in less than 40 years, in 39 short, brisk, brilliant, brutal years, benefited humankind because he sacrificed his life for the cause of human advance, for the cause of world peace, and for the advantages of those whose backs were against the wall, to be lifted up into the daylight of opportunity, dragged from the desolate night of inequality, and to embrace all of us, brothers and sisters, across many chasms, many axes of race and class and gender, and ultimately sexual orientation and region and religion and geography. And so Martin Luther King Jr. gave his life in defense of those whose backs were against the wall, whose faces had been turned down by the downward spiral of demobilization, of economic inequality, of racial injustice, of social suffering. And he lifted their plight before the conscience of this nation, and he invited America to become better than it had been acting, to live according to the better angels of its nature, as President Lincoln said. And so when I think about Martin Luther King Jr., I think about a man who was willing to tell the truth to America about itself, but that was difficult. He was praised in some parts of this country. You may be surprised, especially young people, to note that Martin Luther King Jr. was not widely celebrated near the end of his life. He was reviled. If I were to say to you, LeBron James, just think about how you feel about him. That's why I got beat up at lunch. Now think about the antipathy. Think about the resentment. Think about the hurt, the pain, the agony. Think about the tough feelings. Now magnify that and then multiply that by 1,000. And you will begin to understand some of the response to Martin Luther King Jr. Yes, he was viewed that way, as a traitor to the cause of American democracy because he spoke out against the war in Vietnam. The sermon from which your president extracted a quotation of Martin Luther King Jr. was delivered at the Riverside Church in New York City. And there King said, by his own admission, I would never find myself initially in response to Vietnam among the names of those who are profiles in courage, referring to the title of a book by President John F. Kennedy. He said, I wouldn't have seen my name in the lights of heroism because I was not very heroic. He was self-critical, which is unusual for most leaders, to be humble in the face of their own accomplishments or the gravitas of their failures. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke out against the war in Vietnam. He was called and pilloried as a traitor. He was seen as denying the legitimacy and authenticity of American patriotism. Why? Because he criticized America. But he believed with James Baldwin that I love America more than any nation on earth, and therefore I reserve the right to criticize her ceaselessly. Not because you're a hater, not because you denied the legitimacy of America, but because you want America to be all that it can become. And so Martin Luther King Jr. loved this nation, and he loved it enough to tell the truth. And if I were to talk about his legacy for the 21st century, I would defrost him, thaw him out from his frozen status and stature in the 1963 speech he gave, to which President Snyder made reference. That great speech where King talked about his dream for America, and really even in that speech we don't deal with the entire speech. We just deal with the end of it, the good part when he's hooping. But when he started out, he said 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope for millions of Negroes who had been manacled in the shackles of slavery. On he went, talking about the fact that we were marooned on a tiny island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. Now that goes against and conflicts these churches that preach a gospel of pure materialism, prosperity gospel, name it, claim it, collect your check, ATM machine, deeper than the cross. These churches, which have no social conscience, don't speak about racial profiling, don't talk about economic inequality in Appalachia, refuse to speak about homophobia in their churches. And so Dr. King said that we are marooned on a tiny island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. What about the legacy for the 21st century? As we bail out banks and leave citizens without any recourse or any resource. And those same banks don't even feel compelled to give loans to the people whose tax dollars help bail them out. Which is why so many of these folk have to go to predatory lenders on payday to get their checks cashed. I know it's to get their checks cashed. I want the young people to understand we understand correct grammar. And so Martin Luther King Jr. said that we are marooned on a tiny island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. He said we have come to the nation's capital having been written a check that bounced. And he said, I know the nation got more dough than that, more capital than that. He said, I refuse to believe that the great vaults of democracy are empty. Then he said the whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of this nation until the Negro is granted his or her citizenship rights. Then he talked about police brutality. He talked about the marvelous new militancy that had engulfed black America, but he warned against black supremacy being put in place of white supremacy. Then Dr. King talked about police brutality. He said also that the Negro in the North can't vote, in the South can't vote, and the Negro in the North believes he has nothing for which to vote. All of this in that great 1963 speech, but we overlooked that. And then, because he had been reading his speech, and Dr. King was at best when he was not reading but reciting from his heart the improvisational ethic of inspiration that had engulfed him and allowed him to soar oratorically. For him, he was given about a C+ speech. Everybody else, it would have been an A-. And Mahalia Jackson on the side, his dear friend, because women were not allowed to speak on the podium that day. Even when you fight oppression, sometimes you reproduce oppression. Even when you resist change, you keep other people in chains at the same time. Tough lesson, but we got to acknowledge it. And so those great leaders were speaking about freedom and liberation from racism, even as they duplicated the desire for sexism. But black women, even if you keep them off stage, gonna still be heard. And so Mahalia Jackson from the side said, tell him about the dream, Martin. He put that paper down. He said, despite the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. But even then, we don't listen to what he said in that dream. He said, it is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream. One day, my 4 little children will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And now many of our conservative brothers and sisters have gone out here saying that King was against affirmative action and black protests and black progress and that everybody should be colorblind. That ain't what he was saying. Now we got talking about King's legacy in the 21st century. He would certainly be critical of these people out here, politicians on either side of the aisle who are not concerned about poor people. And we got all these people just glad to be firing people. And then we got folk out here who saying that we ought to teach poor kids to be janitors. And want to, and another one who says basically that black folk only stopped rioting in the 1990s because they had to pick up their welfare checks. Shout out to Brother Paul. But what's interesting, now it's amazing to me that the vicious stereotypes that we thought we had done away with have resurrected themselves. Now, Newt Gingrich, we work. We believe in working. We worked for 350 years for free. I mean, I don't know, look like the evidence against you. What was you doing then? Theoretically, collectively, what were you doing? And so if we are to look at Dr. King's legacy, we'd have to challenge some of these politicians who are out here parroting and parading his name, who are putting forth his image and absorbing his icon, and yet they do not measure up to his desire to see everybody addressed. How can you, in the name of a Christian God, much less a religious impulse, justify your own economic stability in suggesting that those who don't have because they ain't smart enough, good enough, don't work hard enough, haven't been blessed enough, are not righteous enough? And it always bites you right where you sit. Now you defending yourself against charges. You want to be a little bit more open in your relationships. And what's interesting, and look here, I ain't here to judge nobody. I'm trying to hold on the best I know how. Hoping my stuff don't come out, hope it keep clean until I'm out of here. But having said that, why is it that the self-righteous, condescending, moralistic folk against gay marriage, against immigrants and all these folk, and then all your stuff is just so foul, funky, and nefarious? Here you are, a United States senator speaking out against gay and lesbian issues, and you in the bathroom toe-tapping. What more proof do you need that to be gay or lesbian or transgender or bisexual is not a socially constructed choice? Merely a lifestyle that you chose, as opposed to the real identity that you have been nurtured in and in which you have nurtured your own self-conception. In other words, people saying you just made a lifestyle choice is wrong. Why would a senator who speaks against it give in to those desires? Here we are, if we're going to talk about extending King's legacy and talking about diversity, even in our black churches where we practice homophobia. I ain't never been to a black church that don't take gay money. Never. I've never heard them say, we're going to accept everybody's tithes and offerings except the gay people. The only funny money they don't want is change. We against gay marriage. What kind of, given the numbers in our community, we need to let everybody get married. The roaches and the rats and the rodents. Now, look, I know you have legitimate disagreements about what you think, and black folk mad at the fact that gay and lesbian, transgender, bisexual people come along appropriating our discourse for them. You don't own that discourse, first of all, right? King borrowed it from Gandhi. What you gonna do, pay royalties to the Indians? You don't own an idea that's true. You apply it, you glorify it, you amplify it. You don't possess that. As if you have a copyright on what it means to want to be treated like a human being. So black folk will say, well, I can't pretend I'm not black, but gay people can pretend they're not gay. You're acting as if there are no black gay people or Latino. My point is not simply to reinforce a hierarchy of needs to suggest that some people suffer more than others. My point is to argue against that very premise by saying if you're going to extend King's legacy, it has to be uncomfortable even for African American people who want to quote the same Bible used to viciously beat them up as being subservient and inferior. The Bible used to say that we should be slaves. We turn around and use the same Bible to suggest why gay people are going to hell. And then even beyond that, if we're going to extend King's legacy, we got to talk about this incredible inequality in this culture, the poverty that exists. People stuck at the bottom not because they're lazy or disinclined to work. We know that race and class coming together have a horrible synergistic impact on people who are vulnerable and poor. Black people are not the only poor people, so when you have all these racist and racialized dog whistle codes that the far right are using now to suggest black people, Rick Santorum says, I don't want to give all the money to black people on welfare. Brother, most people on welfare happen to be white in Appalachia. They're not African American, they're not Latino. And those same people pay their taxes like you do, or perhaps even more. If we could find out what Mitt Romney was paying if he would ever release his taxes. We don't know, we just guessing. They're paying a higher percentage in their lower economic bracket. This is why we call upon President Obama to be more sensitive to those who are at the bottom. And if we're going to extend King's legacy, we got to be critical of everybody. Not just the folk you don't like, Newt Gingrich and Barack Obama. Now we know black folk real sensitive about that. LeBron times 50 on that one right there. Right? And I understand that, because Obama just gets so much hate just for being a brother. We could dress it up and say sophisticated theoretical things about, what the ideas and philosophies and ideological impulses are of certain people to resist him. But at the end of the day, some of that stuff is just because he's a brother. Right? No other reason. We can dress it up. It's the notion that a black man is president of the United States of America. Oh, my God. And so black folk are proud because people have, 44 presidents, we ain't had but one. Many of my white brothers and sisters remind me, hey, he's half us, Okay, we got half a brother. Y'all done have 43 and a half. Can we use this half a brother? Can we be proud of him? Can we do that? We like the way he walks. So, how you doing? We just like that. We like to see them in the White House. We ain't never seen no woman like Michelle Obama in the White House. And then this ridiculous and rude congressman is mad at her, talking about her big old, yeah. Yeah, she got it. Don't be mad, because you ain't got it. Don't be upset. You can look, not touch. You can appreciate. We produce those every day. She is the shape of things to come. But she got an undergraduate degree from Princeton, law degree from Harvard. She ain't just beautiful and chocolate charming, ebony ecstasy and furrowed in coffee flesh, but she is that too. She's brilliant and insightful. She said, don't call me angry, I'm articulate. I got an opinion, I'm intelligent. And if you don't like Barack Obama, ain't a black person on earth you gonna dig. Not, he ain't mad. I know a lot of my progressive white brothers and sisters say, I want Obama to get mad. No, you really don't. Because you can't deal with the angry black men you already know. You can't even take T.O. or Ocho Cinco's. What you gonna do with an angry black president in the White House? Pow! I vetoed that bill, Bia. for shizzle my nizzle, dude. You don't really want that. You do not want to see that. Obama's calm. They claim they want a Snoop Dogg up in there. No, they don't. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow me, but don't lose your grip, because 9 trizzies, the year's here for me to mess up, and I ain't holding nothing back. Rat-tat-tat-tat, because I never hesitate to put a Republican on his back. No, you don't want that. You don't want Ice Cube up in there. You got Johnny Mathis. Chances are. And still don't like him. And still can't tolerate him. And still call him a communist or call him an un-American. Anything but a child of God. And so we know that part of the pressure on Obama has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that he's black. Having said that, that don't mean that we can't say to him at the same time, you got to do the right thing and be held accountable. Just because we dig you and love you and appreciate you as a brother, a lot of black folk get it twisted. They think he's Moses, he's Pharaoh. That ain't a judgment, that's a job description. He ain't Moses. He ain't a black leader leading black people across to the promised land. He is the exemplification and symbol of the work of black people to get there. He's the president of the United States of America, which means he's Pharaoh, in charge, running the country politically. That's not a judgment against him, that's an acknowledgement of his job. But a prophet like Martin Luther King Jr. was critical of Pharaoh. He was critical, Martin Luther King Jr., of LBJ. That's not LeBron James. No, y'all think LBJ is LeBron, but there was another LBJ before him from Texas. Pretty good to go, too. Oh, yeah, they called him a redneck racist. If he was one of the most beautiful redneck racists we've ever seen. Despite that vitriolic bigotry that engulfed his own native region, he rose up to sign the Civil Rights Bill and the Civil Rights Act. He inspired, well, along with Dr. King, who died, and as a result of his death being murdered in 1968, signed the Fair Housing Act. The reality is that Lyndon Baines Johnson did more to help African American people than any president since Lincoln. And King was still critical of him. Not because he didn't like LBJ. He said, I appreciate what he did, but I have a conscience that says I must speak out against the war in Vietnam, and I must speak on behalf of the poor. And so even as much as we love the president, and we see him as an extension of that dream, we also have to see him as president of the United States of America. And we got to argue with him. Why is it 17.5%, maybe 18%, maybe really 20% black unemployment, and you ain't got nothing to say? We don't want you to say it because you're a black man. We want you to say it because you're the president. A lot of black folk they just can't tolerate that. I don't understand it. They understand the viciousness to which he is subject. That doesn't exempt him from accountability. You still in charge, the most powerful man in the world, and you can't tell other black folk to be accountable and to stop belly aching and stop complaining and get their bedroom slippers off and start marching. You too, General. We just foot soldiers. You the general. What you doing? What you gonna do in the fourth quarter? And so we say that we talk about extending King's tradition. King would love, people ask, what would he say about Obama? He would love him, he would appreciate him, he would respect him, he would be proud of him, and he would hold him accountable. Because he did the same thing for Lyndon Baines Johnson. The reason I say this is because we must get over the romance of pride and get down to the bedrock of politics. And Martin Luther King Jr., if we're going to extend his legacy, was about loving and lovingly criticizing those who were in power, not to demonize them, not to assault them, but to call them to accountability for the resources that they have. And then a couple more things. If we're going to extend King's legacy into the 21st century, we got to deal with this prejudice against young people. And a lot of people mad at young folk, the way they dress. I know it ain't the best you think. They sagging, oh my God, pull your pants up, or as people say, pull your britches up. But are we really going to do as some legislators in Georgia and in the South do, really pass legislation against sagging pants? Aren't there more pressing issues than sagging pants? As I'm almost done, aren't there more pressing issues than the sartorial choice of young people? Why don't you lift their dreams and maybe their pants will follow? Why don't you listen to the anger and pain? Listen to the people they listen to like Tupac Shakur. Somebody wake me, I'm dreaming. I started as a seed, the semen, swimming upstream, planted in the womb while screaming. On the top was my pops, my mama hollering, stop from a single drop. This is what they got? Not to disrespect my people, but my papa was a loser. Only plan he had for mama was the blanker and abuser. And even as a seed, I could see his plan for me, stranded on welfare, another broken family. Maybe Biggie, Notorious B.I.G. Back in the days, our parents used to take care of us. Look at them now, they're even scared of us. Calling the state for help because they can't maintain. Darn things done changed. If I wasn't in the rap game, I probably have a key knee deep in the crack game. Because the streets is a short stop. Either you're slinging crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot. Darn, it's hard being young from the slums, eating 5-cent gums, not knowing where your meal's coming from. What happened to the summertime cookouts? Every time I turn around, a brother's being took out. Or they listen to Jay-Z. Now all my teachers couldn't reach me and my mama couldn't beat me hard enough to match the pain of my pop not seeing me. So with that disdain in my membrane, got on my pimp game, blanked the world, my defense came. I'm almost done, but I'll tell you, let's get over the prejudice against young people and learn to love and embrace them as Dr. King did. He spoke to gang members. He spoke to young people who were disaffected and who were alienated from the political tradition, and he embraced them and loved them, challenged their violence, challenged their narrow vision, but invited them into a society where they could be loved. And finally, as I end, if we're going to extend King's tradition, we must fight for equality for women in this world. And the reason that's necessary. And as I end, as people said, women hold up half the world, certainly half the sky. They elevate and motivate, and they do more than that. They work often for pay that is half of what a man makes, or 3/4 of what a man makes. They do all the work and more. They love our children and rear them without recognition. Domestic responsibilities are still assigned a lower niche on the hierarchy of recognition. Work is not rewarded equally. Women's lives are dismissed. Violence against them continues nearly unabated. The justification of assault upon women because of their sexuality is still driving public policy and perception. And so we got to say enough of that. If we're going to extend King's legacy, we would challenge Martin Luther King Jr.'s sexism himself. He wanted his wife at home rearing the children. Not until he died was she able to emerge. As I heard one preacher say once about Moses and then the prophets who rose up to him, don't let your death be a blessing to the church. Why is it that it has to be either or, that women must be in the shadow of their men and then only step forward to claim their rightful place in the world? If you are a member of King's tradition and trajectory, you must repudiate sexism. I say this not as somebody who hasn't paid the price for trying to make those arguments in the trenches in churches, but we must move forward. We must say, because without women, where would we be as a community? Where would we be as black folk? Where would we be as righteous warriors and rebels against injustice? As I end, do you think strong women, and a lot of us can't take strong women. That's why we got this narrow, vicious, assault on them in rap music and in the church. The church don't call them the names, they just treat them like what the names are. Oh, well, you can't preach here. You can't speak. You've not been blessed. You got all this religious imagery trying to make God co-sign your bigotry. And so, as I end, if you are part of King's tradition, you must be for equality across the board, and especially for women. Why? Because, see, Harriet Tubman was a strong black woman. You think she didn't speak strongly? What do you think she said? Excuse me. There's a little thing called the Underground Railroad. I want you guys to come along. It's really cool. That ain't what she said. She said, be here tonight at 8:30, and don't be late. And some Negroes came, and then they straggled in, and they said, Miss Tubman, we was going to go, but we done changed our minds. But we's not going to tell nobody. Oh, she said, I know you won't. She had a Bible in one hand and a shotgun in the other. I know y'all don't remember Junior Walker and the All-Stars. Shotgun, shoot him before he run now. Okay, maybe LL Cool J. Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. What? Mama said, knock you out. And so she knocked out some of those Negroes. And then they woke up, where we is, you're free. We done drug your butt to freedom. And if you're part of King's tradition, you'll keep doing it. Peace.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It is wonderful to have a scholar of Dr. Dyson's stature on our campus. I also want to thank Dr. Mobley. Another great year, another great report. I do also want to point out that when you're not new anymore, you're this other thing that we're not going to say, right? Old, right? Right, okay. Marilyn has been a wonderful partner to me and is doing a great job leading our university's diversity efforts with our whole leadership team with her. So thank you for that. I also want to say a special thank you to Councilman Dow's kids who came from schools in his area. Thank you for joining us. And on the theory that it is never too early to start recruiting for Case Western Reserve University, I urge you to take a very good look at our campus. We have a lot to offer, and we'd like to be talking to you in a few years. Thank you all very much for coming today.